Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Politics with Sherry Jacobus. Thank you for subscribing. And if you're not yet a subscriber and you just happen to find us from scrolling around, if you like what you see in here, hit that button and help us out. And also get involved in the comment section because it gets really good. So, is it too early to say it's happening? And by it's happening, I mean Republicans in Congress turning on Trump for something that is real and tangible and has nothing to do with making America great again or partisanship or anything else. I'm talking now about the announcement by both the Republicans. Remember, Republicans still have the majority in the House and the Senate. And both of those chambers, Republican led Congress, is announced that they are launching investigations into Pete Hegseth ordering the murder of civilians. First of all, the international community is saying that these are war crimes to be firing upon these boats out off the coast of Venezuela and claiming that this is part of the drug cartel. Drugs, the drugs they're concerned about are not made in Venezuela. This is about oil. This is about politics. And so this isn't just a one-off, we're finding out. So Republicans are now taking the lead because they have the majority and they're asking questions. They do not want to be associated with this. Also, there might even be one or two that want to do the right thing just because it's the right thing to do. And this has to do with the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who apparently gave the order when they were blowing up one of the boats, a boat there were some civilians. Yeah, these are civilians. They were clinging to the side of the boat as survivors. And he said, kill them all. Make sure there are no survivors. That is a war crime. International law says that is a war crime. Okay. And this is what they are doing. So Republicans are not standing for this. This goes along with what we've been talking about here. I've been talking a lot lately about Republicans in Congress being very, very different than the people who work for Trump, that are in his cabinet, that are his staff. They all have committed crimes for him, almost all of them. They need pardons. Trump purposely hired these people and associates with them because he already knows they are unethical, they are criminally minded, or they are already criminals. And therefore, it's easy to get them to commit that first crime. This is how the mafia works too. Once they commit a crime for him, they think it's no big deal. He'll pardon me, Well, that means they have to continue to commit huge crimes for him, or they don't get the pardon. See how that works? When you're in, you're all in. You don't get to quit the mob. So it's not a one-off, because now we're finding out that in 2018, Stephen Miller, he wanted to use drones to blow up boats carrying migrants, including children. And this is something that former White House staffer, former administration staffer Miles Taylor wrote about. I think he wrote this in 2023. So this stuff is all coming to light. And, they wanted to do this. Trump wanted to do this. And like, well, no, you can't do that. There are people in the administration telling Trump he can't do these things. They've been told that they can't fire on these civilians, that these blowing up these boats and killing people, claiming, oh, they're terrorists, they're drug smugglers, without any evidence. In fact, all the evidence points against that being the case. First of all, I think Trump is bloodthirsty. I think he's been dying to kill people. He likes it. It makes him feel powerful. He likes the shock and awe of it. This is what makes him feel like Putin, and he admires Putin a lot, and he admired Hitler, as we know. So the fact that, some of these things are coming out, we're finding out what he actually wanted to do. This, by the way, is in addition to him calling a reporter piggy, another one stupid, and then went off on then he called Governor Walz of Minnesota retarded. I think we might be getting to that point where Republicans, we've been wondering, at what point do they break? What point did they break? Well, the Republicans in Congress, what I was starting to say, they haven't committed crimes for Trump, so far as we know. They are in a completely different category than the cabinet and the people who work for Trump. And that is why I think they're the first to sort of fall by the wayside and say, we can't deal with this stuff anymore. They also see that he has the lowest approval ratings ever in history since, and so he can't help them back home. And it's not so much that they think he can help them back home. I think what they want to make sure now is, can he hurt me back home, even with hardcore MAGA? And some of them are thinking, do I really want to defend or lie for him when he's killing innocent people? The stuff that, Pete Hegseth should go in front of the Hague for this. I mean, this is not okay, to say the least. And if it's international court that demands justice for this, Trump can't give him a pardon. So right now, this is all happening. This is why we had the Democratic senators and House members who are veterans do that video, and they warned against obeying illegal orders and unconstitutional orders. I assumed that they were talking about National Guard and ICE, and maybe they were a little bit, but my guess is it was about this. What they were warning military personnel is that if you are given this order to kill them all, as Pete Hegseth gave the order, kill them all, make sure there are no survivors. That is against, I mean, that's a war crime. There were two people clinging to the side of the boat after the drone strike, which in and of itself was illegal. But then to shoot them, no, you don't do that. In fact, throughout history in international crimes, there have been people who gave those illegal orders who did in fact face justice. So Pete Hegseth is tweeting a big game here, big words. I don't think it's going to work for him. And I kind of only half jokingly said, will his defense be, I'm sorry, but I'm an alcoholic and I was drunk at the time when I gave the order. I don't think that's going to fly either. Although, you know what? If he thought it would work for him, I can see. And then you want to throw everything up against the wall to save yourself. You do it. You do it. So that alone has got, these folks in trouble. Now, is this something the Supreme Court gave Trump immunity to do everything? Well, Trump doesn't care what happens to the people around him. He's giving these orders. He may very well look at Pete Hegseth and say, oops, sorry, yeah, pardon won't work here. He doesn't care. Trump doesn't care about that. He really doesn't care. And I think we know that by now. But at this point, the warning is to the military personnel. You're ordered to kill the two survivors on a strike like that. You must say no. That is not sedition. If you obey that order, it is an illegal order. It is an illegal order. And you would be held accountable. You cannot use the excuse, I was just following orders. That didn't help in the Nuremberg trials. So we are at this unbelievable point in time right now where some of the worst what ifs that we've been saying over the years have come true. We are facing it. We are facing it. And we've kind of have said, at this point, it's going to have to be Republicans who save us. It just might be in this case. They can't take it anymore. Okay, that's what they're telling us. And we've heard that about Mike Johnson. We've heard that he is, published reports say that he's tired. He's had it. He may resign because he doesn't like the way the White House is just crapping all over him. And that's why there's a handful of House Republicans that are saying the same thing, that they may just resign, not retire, but resign, which would pretty much mean that Hakeem Jeffries becomes Speaker. Is that a good thing for the midterms or not? I don't know. But that's what's happening here. Now, I was talking to someone within the last few days, someone who used to be, it's a name okay, someone very much in the know, and I won't give other credentials, but the credentials are pretty high. And this person he's in a position to know these things, but he's been told that it's a lot worse for Mike Johnson than even was being reported. That his family's worried about him, that he is physically exhausted, that he has had it, that this stuff with Trump, you just cannot work with Trump. You can't support this stuff. And the threats and then being blindsided by things, just like something now it seems almost quaint, but the demolition of the East Wing of our White House without even giving the heads up to Republicans in Congress, but just expecting them to defend it. Trump has the majority in the House and Senate. He could have gotten them to rubber stamp it with something silly, and then that would be at least some cover. He didn't bother to do that. This is something that was done without even one day's notice. Just one day, they demolished it. First, it was that porch area, the portico porch with the pillars. First, it was that part. They said, well, we had to do that for X reason, but that's it. Because first he said, oh, we aren't touching the White House, the existing structure. Well, they did. And they said, well, it's just that part. Well, it wasn't. Then they went and demolished the rest of the East Wing without even letting Republicans in Congress know, but expecting them to defend it. So that's one thing. But the murder of innocent people in the Caribbean, no. So it's just been too much, a tipping point. Maybe they think it's funny, or they can defend it or say we're not getting involved when he calls reporters these names. Piggy, stupid, are you stupid? Calling the governor of Minnesota, who is Democratic vice presidential nominee, retarded. Yeah. So that's one thing, but killing innocent civilians because you think no one's going to stop you from doing it is a horse of a different color. And Republicans in the House and the Senate see that. And they are investigating it, unless they are investigating it just to rubber stamp it. I mean, that's a possibility too. Just to give Trump and Hegseth cover. We are the bad guys now. The United States, not our side of it, those of us who are fighting this, but the United States of America is not trustworthy. We are not the good guys anymore. We do not stand for freedom anymore and democracy. Tourism is way down. People don't feel comfortable coming here, don't want to. I don't blame them. Can't blame them. The destruction of so many things that we took for granted and many things we held dear has been massive under Trump. So, yes, Republicans in Congress are now the ones standing up to him over these extrajudicial killings and killings of civilians that they don't want to be a part of. Not only do they want to just ignore it, they now want to take a stand on it, it would seem. Trump finally went so far that even MAGA Republicans are forced to respond to this. But don't kid yourself. Don't kid yourself. If Trump were way up in the polls, back in the home districts and home states of these guys, I don't think they'd be touching it with a 10-foot pole. So it's, but also these are the types of things Trump is doing that makes sure that the poll numbers are way down for him. Now, normally Republicans only respond to the economy. There's the MAGA cult, and then there's the non-MAGA Trump Republican voters. They don't consider themselves, they might be your country club set, or people that really, they've been told to hate Democrats. They don't like Trump. They think he's a buffoon, but they're looking at their own bank accounts. They're looking at the economy, and they thought that he'd be their guy. Well, guess what? He's not. They know it. And they may not care about some of this other stuff, like extrajudicial killings from the people who wanted to do it to migrants and innocent civilians, to migrants on these boats. They wanted, Stephen Miller wanted to have drone attacks on these boats, blow them up on boats, even boats with children. And look at the power and influence he has. How did we let it get this bad? How did it go this far? Merrick Garland, for starters. Well, Nancy Pelosi not impeaching Trump the first time around after the Mueller report. That was a biggie. He knew then where the boundary. He just crashed through the guardrails, and she blinked. Democrats blinked. Also, never thought that an American president could do all these things. But that was the start. And had they impeached him then, there wouldn't have been need for the further additional impeachment. So finally, after 10 years into the era of Trump, I am hoping that in fact this is happening, that it is finally happening. Um, it's going to be interesting to watch and listen to JD Vance on some of this stuff. He gets weirdly kind of quiet. And on my podcast this week, I had Tony Michaels on, and he said he thinks JD Vance is really kind of a weird guy. Um, it's almost like he's just sitting back waiting. Okay, when do we pull the trigger to get rid of Trump? They can do it with the Epstein files. They can do it with a lot of stuff. JD Vance can come out and say, look, it's unacceptable. We need the 25th Amendment. We need to pull him out, And the thing is, even though we know it's an op, and we would know that he's doing it for Peter Thiel and Putin and whatnot, we know that Trump has to go. That Trump has to go. But at this point in time, let's just say good for House and Senate Republicans for taking the lead, because they have to. Democrats don't have the majority yet in terms of launching these investigations, but I hope it's a serious investigation. If nothing else, it does lead with this narrative as we go through this process, as we head into what will officially be the midterm election year. Okay. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. I thought it was worth noting that this isn't the first time Trump did this. So you can't say that, well, this time it's about just because he's really old and there's dementia if they want the 25th. Now that we know that this was being advocated by Stephen Miller in 2018 to do something even worse, Trump wanted to certainly consider that. We know that Trump wanted to know if they could fire on American civilian protesters who were exercising their First Amendment rights. This really is who Trump is. You can say he's crazy and mentally ill. That's beside the point. He is evil and he is a criminal. And I believe that he's been responsible for the death directly for the deaths of many people long before he was in the White House. We know that the defunding of USAID has resulted in what's now, we've been told by the experts, over 600,000 deaths worldwide from pulling much needed life-saving aid. That's what the United States of America used to be, a beacon of light. Now we are drones coming at you, killing innocent people, committing war crimes. And we finally have Republicans in Congress that are saying, we're not doing this. Again, Trump's cabinet and his staff are criminals. There were criminals coming in, very likely, which is why they were hired, because he knew he can get them to commit crimes. They need pardons. The House and Senate Republicans are a completely different animal. And I've said that a few times because I want us to keep that in your mind when you're kind of trying to analyze this stuff and peer around corners and predict what they're going to do. If they're no longer afraid of Trump, and Trump's low poll numbers back home in their districts and states are why they're not as afraid of him. So maybe that triggers a little bit of morality and ethics in them. I don't know, but at least there's something happening. I'm not going as far as saying it's happening, it's finally happening. I'm hopeful that we're starting to get on the right track. I still think it'll take a while though. So love to hear what you have to say about this in the comments.